All right, so now that I've got the ingredients pulled out for tonight's dinner, that's already set aside and ready to go, and I got my smoothie made for today. Let's go ahead and get ourselves ready on making this ranch dressing mix. So it is not a wet mix. This is going to be a dry mix. I'm going to keep it in a mason jar just like this. I've never used this recipe before, but I'm going to give it a shot and see how it goes. There may be an item or two that because I'm on my pantry challenge right now, I may not have it. So I'm either going to have to substitute it or just omit it altogether because we are trying to stick with our no spend or low spend monthly budget. And so we'll go ahead and move forward with that. Let's see what we can do. Okay, I think I've got all the ingredients that we're going to need for this. So we're going to start off. I'm going to double the recipe that I have in here. Let me get a towel really quickly. Wipe this stuff off. Make sure this counter is cleaned up here. Okay, so I'm going to start with 2/3 of a cup of buttermilk powder. So mine just looks like this. I just got this at the grocery store. Oh, I don't know, a while ago because I knew I was going to be doing something similar to this at some point in time. But again, this pantry challenge is just kind of forcing me to do things that I've been kind of putting off. Um, so I kind of like that in the sense that it's keeping me accountable for moving forward with the stuff that I want to do. Because if I don't do it, then I don't have it. I can't just run to the store and get a package of, ranch dressing mix. So it's actually forcing me to put it together myself, which I like. All right, so we've got that buttermilk powder. That's 2/3 cup of that. We're going to do 2 tablespoons of garlic powder. Put this in here. Whoops, that's a teaspoon. I definitely want to use a tablespoon. We're going to do 2 tablespoons of garlic powder. Garlic powder is one of the most used, I guess it's considered a spice, one of the most used spices in my household. So I tend to keep it in a little bit bigger of a jar like this. It's the same with the onion powder, which we're also going to do 2 tablespoons of the onion powder as well. But because I use them so often and so much, I just keep them in these kind of bigger containers. So there's 1 tablespoon and 2 tablespoons. We'll put that aside. So we've got that. We're going to move on to 2, so it'll be 4 teaspoons of dried parsley. So 4 teaspoons, which will be like a tablespoon plus, but let's just do it this way to make it easier. So you've got 1, 2, it looks like inside my parsley I have a little bit of a stem. There we go. 3 and 4. Now this parsley that's inside of here is what we grew last year with our herbs, and we just dried it out in our dehydrator. I would not recommend it in the future to do it in the dehydrator. I think for this next year coming up, my herbs, I'm just going to tie them and hang them upside down because I found that when you do it in the dehydrator, it does have a little bit of a breeze in there and it kind of blows everything around. And they do have some bags that you can use for those too to kind of prevent that. But I think I'm just going to go the old fashioned way and just hang them upside down, tied, and let them dry out that way. All right, so we're going to do 3 teaspoons of dill. Moving on to this one. Dill is one of those things that we grow every year in the garden as well. However, I don't ever get to the point where I have enough to dry out and use for, cooking and baking. I always use it for canning. So our dill goes pretty quickly because I use it for canning. And I don't ever have a chance to dry it out. So I think I might want to try to grow a larger at some point in time. I don't know if that'll happen in this year's garden, but at some point in time, I would like to do that. Looks like my dishwasher is going off and making noise there. Okay, moving on. We're going to do, it says we need to do dried chives. I don't think I have any. Let me check my spice rack over here. I'm looking and I'm reading. I actually don't think I have any chives, which is really sad because I know that the chives is really gonna kind of give this seasoning a really good boost, especially when it comes to mixing it in with like sour cream and recipes. Those chives are really gonna make a difference. But this is the downfall, I guess, of being on this pantry challenge is I'm not gonna have that to add into there. So we're just gonna have to miss that one for now, unless after I go through this part of the video, I go and check somewhere else and I happen to have any Otherwise, I'll just have to add it when this pantry challenge is over. So you can see that this is like real life and that's not what I have. So we're not going to use it. So next we're going to the salt. We're going to do 2 teaspoons of salt. So that's one. Here we go. 2 teaspoons of salt. And it does call for some sugar as well. Not a whole lot. So we're going to do a teaspoon of sugar. But I was actually surprised to see the sugar in there. So 1 teaspoon of sugar. And then dried tarragon, it says that it's optional. I do have dried tarragon leaves here, so I'm going to use this one. It wants a teaspoon of it, but my tarragon is very, it's very coarse. I don't know if you can see it or not well enough in there, but the dried leaves, they're very thick and big. So I'm going to try to crumple that. I just want to make sure that I'm getting at least a teaspoon here. So let me get in there with a teaspoon. And then before I dump it in there, I'm just going to crumble it a little bit in my hands because I want it to be a little bit finer. Don't want it to be such large chunks. That way that flavor gets distributed in there. So that's a little bit better. So we'll go ahead and throw that in there. Like I said, it does state in there that that's optional, but it is recommended. I'm glad I have it, so I can put that in there. We're going to do half a teaspoon of black pepper. That's about half a teaspoon of black pepper. And then a 1/4 teaspoon times 2. So we're going to do half a teaspoon of mustard. So there we go. Half a teaspoon of mustard. And as far as I know, that's pretty much it. So it only takes a couple minutes to put together. It's not something that takes very long. I'm just going to grab the lid to that. I'm going to put it on there and then I'm just going to shake that all up. And hopefully that all incorporates together and it mixes up. And that is what we're going to use for our ranch dressing when the time comes. So whether you use a ranch dressing seasoning packet or you like to just have ranch dressing on things like vegetables and dips or whatnot, if you use it for cooking and recipes, you would just use this as you would any other one. Let me see if I can move this out of the way here. There we go. And then as far as I know, when you're replacing the amounts of like packets, like if I were to go to the store and buy a packet of that, of ranch dressing, this would be the equivalent in here would be 2 tablespoons. So I would use 2 tablespoons of this dry mix to replace 1 packet of the store-bought seasoning mix, if that makes any sense. So that should be all mixed up. Let's see what that looks like on the inside. Looks like that on the inside. So you can start to see. Definitely smells really good. So we're going to give that a shot and see how that turns out. Since this is a new recipe to us, I don't know how it's going to turn out, but we're going to cross our fingers that it ends up being pretty good. And we'll use it in the future for some upcoming recipes. Hopefully this is helpful for you. If you'd like to do something similar in your home, at least have an idea how to get that started.